How's it going? And welcome to episode 194 of On the Wire. Proud member, the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter and on YouTube at On the Wire Pod. I am Adam Howe. You can follow me at 80 grade. That's all spelled out. Kevin Hastings can be followed either at Hastings Kevin or at Chasing Wins. We've got a great show lined up for you today, as always. And before we get into all that, Kevin, I can't, no, I have to introduce our guest because we are on the screen here. It's just weird to just start talking and not introduce. Trevor Hooth is joining us today as the title of the episode, Rook, Line, and Sinker, one of my proudest moments of episode naming, by the way, will lead you to believe we will be talking about prospects and rookies, and we will be having a good time doing it. And luckily, we have Trevor on with us, the co-host of Coffee Talk right here on the Pitcher List Podcast Network, where all you talk about are rookies and prospects that are going to make an impact for the current redraft landscape, and not so much dynasty or keeper leagues. And so we get to take what you guys talk about every single week and dial it into just hopefully, an hour and a half worth of conversation. So I hope you're up to the challenge, Trevor. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. I am fresh off of meeting my first nephew for the first time and holding him. And so I'm in a great mood right now. I get to talk baseball and prospects, Coffee Talk, as you mentioned. My co-host, Nate Kosher. It's a lot of fun. I love doing the show. I talk way too much about prospects. He pulls me in. You can hear about all the bad trades that I'm making this off season. For example, on this pod, I've talked about trading Jackson Holliday and Tyler Glasnow from the same team, which is a competitive playoff team, because I am a maniac. So Make sure to tune in to Coffee Talk so you can hear me and Nate talk. And of course, I'm excited to be here on the wire to talk to you, Adam and Kevin. It should be fun.
Great. Kevin, you are still here as well. I didn't mean to jump over you, but I thought it was awkward to talk over our guest when everybody can see him already there. Kevin, how are you doing?
Oh, doing great, Adam. Thank you so much. Yeah, as you were saying prior to hitting the record button, one of my favorite episodes that we do all year. And so happy to have Trevor here, and I got my pen out. I will be taking notes. So, this is going to be amazing. And Mele Kalikimaka to everyone out there as this comes out on Sunday, 3 days before Christmas Day. Hope everybody's having a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Good shout out there, of course. Trevor, of course, as we talk about the co-host of Coffee Talk, but Trevor, you've been doing this a long time in various different formats. What else are you kind of doing, at least this offseason, and then planning on doing for the 2025 season as well?
Yeah, so obviously Coffee Talk, that's going to continue on. I also am doing Dynasty prospect rankings for Fantrax. So go over on Fantrax HQ. I've completed the AL Central. It's been moving slowly because I'm also pursuing a master's degree at the moment. So I'll start my AL East hopefully the next couple of days and start getting that stuff out. And as well as doing some scouting reports for Prospects Live. So just keeping busy with life and prospecting the best that I can.
Awesome. I like how you're doing it in a lot of different formats as well. Like all your content is still prospect based, but you're touching on prospects that are going to help us this year on Coffee Talk, talking about dynasty in other avenues. And then, a mix of both, obviously, in your real life trades and trade discussions as well. Cool. So we got a lot to talk about. As I kind of mentioned at the beginning, we are going to hit the ground running, talking about the rookies and prospects that are going to hopefully make an impact for our teams throughout the 2025 season. We are going to play our favorite game. We're going to play a little Ask with groupings of 3 players that are being drafted right now. Most of them very, very late in drafts. So a lot of them are dart throws. We'll get your guys' take on where you would draft them if forced to. And we're going to stay with hitters. We have a lot of hitters that are being drafted, at least as dart throws. So we'll probably touch on pitchers in a future episode, but you can look forward to a lot of hitter prospect talk in a little bit. But first, news still continues to roll in, even though the winter meeting has ended. We ended last episode outlining or at least kind of previewing the results from the Rule 5 draft. And Kevin, I got your kind of initial take here. But so, Trevor, I want to have you lead us off here. Of the 15 picks that were made in the Rule 5 draft, are there any names in there that stand out to you as being viable options, or ones that you hope or expect to be viable options throughout the 2025? And just as a reminder to anybody who's not aware, Rule 5 draft picks have basically run out of time in the minor leagues. So we give all the other teams the availability to draft them. But if they are drafted, the rules are they have to make the opening day roster. They have to stay on the major league roster of 26 all season long, or be returned back to their previous team, or be sold back. I think it's like you have to charge $1 for them or something like that. It's like selling a car in most states. And so we should expect most of these players to be options at the major league level. Whether or not they actually produce at a fantasy level, that's the question I kind of posed to you, Trevor. What names kind of stand out to you from those results?
Yeah, so I just off the bat, I don't honestly think any of these players will be fantasy viable in 2025. Now, some of these guys they're all very talented baseball players. Obviously, that's why teams wanted to take a chance on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe in the future they could be. But the first overall pick, Shane Smith, he got taken by the White Sox. He stands out a lot, and he, I guess, is closest to being fantasy viable because he plays for the White Sox, which is going to be a common theme that I bring up throughout this show and the rest of this offseason. But also he has upper minors experience and success. He had K per 9 over 10 at the AA level last year, and also got a handful of innings at AAA. So there could be some getting used to it. But, he's got a lot of talent. He's fastball can touch upper 90s in short stints and has a pair of breaking balls that work for him. So he's one who could be, but maybe not. It just depends on how things shake out. I also like Evan Reifert, who the Nationals took out of the Rays organization. It's a pitcher from the Rays, so he's going to be interesting at some point. And I think just being honest, and he has a really good slider that I think he could just live on in inning long outings. It's just, I don't know. Again, I don't know about fantasy viable, but I think that could make him give him the ability to stick and prove what he has. Just to highlight, I'm going to highlight a couple more. Iverson Castellano is a player that Matt Heckman of Pitcher List really loves. Maybe the best player in the draft. Just he hasn't really pitched that much above high A. He had 8 starts in AA, so he's got a lot of talent, but he may not be able to stick just because that's a huge jump for him to make without a whole lot of experience in the upper minors. But if they can hold on to him, then they can start working him as a potential starter down the line because he has that kind of stuff. And then a couple hitters, Cooper Bowman. I've seen him live a bunch of times. Right after he got traded from the Yankees to the Athletics, I was in the Lansing area able to watch high A, which is where he got assigned to. So I saw him a bunch. He's got some pull side power. I like his approach at the plate, and he can play a lot of different positions. So he might wind up in this utility type role with the Reds, who's the team that took him in the Rule 5. And of course, Gage Workman from the Tigers. I'm a Tigers fan. That was the most interesting pick because I just don't get it, but I do at the same time. He has so much swing and miss and has so much swing and miss. He finally got his K percentage under 30 this past season. I think it was at 27, 28, somewhere in there. But he has power, he has speed, and he has a great glove. So I think he has a chance to stick simply as a backup third baseman because right now that position is kind of up in the air for the Chicago Cubs, and it may go to Matt Shaw, something I'll talk about later. But if it goes to Matt Shaw, you might have Gage Workman as a backup who can provide defense and speed late in games, however you want to use them. So there's some interesting pieces here, but fantasy viable is tough to predict with Rule 5 draft picks.
Yeah, we always find it Kevin, we talked about this last week. It's like we always find it interesting what hitters end up going in the Rule 5 draft, just because there's an easier road for fantasy, vitality, or viability. That's not a word. If an injury were to happen or playing time were to shake up in a different way when you expect them just to be a bench piece, all these pitchers, though, especially the interesting ones that Trevor just rolled off, very well could be making our our ERA, our ratio category recommendations throughout the season. Maybe somebody you pick up for $1, $2 just to kind of fill in a spot to iron out, depending on what their usage is like. But I expect most of these pitchers to be bullpen viable rather than starter viable. I mean, Trevor, is there a pitcher on here that you think will actually crack a rotation?
Not in 2025. Yeah, usually if you're a Rule 5 pick, you're looking to hold them in the bullpen, maybe use them if they're, solid enough. But for the most part, you're just looking at relievers that first year, and maybe you extend them out. And even then, I think, at first look, I think Castellano, the guy the Twins took, is the only one. Maybe Mike Vasil, who the Phillies took, but there's only a couple that you think you could see getting extended out beyond 2025.
Yeah, I mean, with the Twins, I don't expect anybody on the Twins to make it past the fourth inning until their third year in the rotation. So that's just not how the Twins operate, or haven't operated. Kevin, after having like more than a week to kind of dwell on it, anything kind of stand out from what Trevor's takes here, or if you had any other names that have kind of stood out to you from this list?
No, not really. I was sitting here nodding the whole time Trevor was talking. Castellano is intriguing to me because, as you and Trevor both brought up, the pitchers, it's easier to retain them, right? You can hide them.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a guy pitch low leverage situations, so you're not wasting the roster spot. If it's a guy you want to keep for future years, even if you don't expect you're getting much out of them in 2025, other than those low leverage innings, somebody like Castellano is someone that I will definitely keep an eye on. You said it perfectly when we're talking our ERA category, which we typically talk about a lot of non-ninth inning relievers when we're talking that throughout the season. If he hits the ground running and things look good, then we'll definitely be talking about him. But it's very rare that we'll see anybody get saves or be in a starting rotation.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, that's enough Rule 5 draft. We did say we were going to talk about prospects and rookies. These guys all fit the bill, but we're going to get to a lot more later on the show. But we have a bunch of other news to get to, and we're going to get to all that right after this quick break. All right, we are back. We're getting into some actual news and notes, different than things that we talked about last week. A couple trades, a couple signings. Let's start with a trade here as I pull up Joe Boyle's player page from the pitcherlist.com site. He was involved in this trade going along with infielder Will Simpson and right-handed pitcher Jacob Waters to Tampa Bay. In return, the Athletics of West Sacramento, they retain the services of lefty Jeffrey Springs and lefty Jacob Lopez, going to be playing their days in West Sacramento ballpark. Kevin, first and foremost, any time that we see a trade with Tampa, we just assume they won the trade somehow. Is that the case here, or did they give up at least potentially a talented arm in Springs to the A's, who just continue to, seem like they're, quote, spending? I'll use the term as loosely as possible when it comes to the A's. Which side of the coin here are you expecting to turn out better?
I hope this is one of those cases where Tampa just fleeced because as I'm sure Trevor is about to tell us, he was talking about Joe Boyle this week on Coffee Talk, and a couple of weeks ago, maybe a little longer than that, maybe a month and a half ago, Eno Saris and Trevor May were talking about Joe Boyle on Rates and Barrels, and the stuff is just nasty. It's all about the bases on balls, right? And he's so electric. And when he's hitting the zone, he looks unstoppable. I'm talking looks Spencer Strider unhittable when he's hitting the zone. So any change of scenery would have been welcomed with a couple of exceptions. But the fact that it's Tampa and this reputation, I really, really hope that it comes to fruition in this spot. The other thing that and I'm gonna yield this to Trevor because he's actually seen him pitch. But the other thing they brought up, he is one of these curious guys. So he is willing to put in the work. He does believe in the data. So that's a plus going to a team like Tampa that's going to sit down and say, hey, this is what we want you to do. I'm very excited about this. I'm very upset that due to my belief, in spite of the talk that West Sacramento is kind of neutral, my belief is neutral in the PCL is going to be great for hitters in Major League Baseball. So I've avoided Joe Boyle so far in drafts, and that upsets me. But he was taken as the fourth to last pick in the DC I just finished, pick 747. I would take him at probably 447 now that he's out of that ballpark. So I'm really anxious to hear what Trevor has to say.
The question I want Trevor to lead off with, and you can take this whatever direction you want, Trevor, is what role is Boyle going to play with Tampa? Just starter, reliever, possible closer option. What do you expect to see out of Boyle in a Tampa uniform in 2025 specifically?
Probably bullpen, and that's hard to say though. Sometimes Tampa goes back and forth. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Spring started in the bullpen, and then they stretched him out at some point. So I would think if they're working on something with Boyle, they might want to start him in the bullpen, just shorter stints, work on what you need to work on, do it against major league hitters if possible. So that would make sense to me. And as Kevin mentioned about the park in Sacramento, like I'm now scared of Springs and Severino. I don't think that I'm not going to touch them with a 10-foot pole. I don't think, because I do think that is going to be very hitter friendly. I mean, what was it, 275 down the line, if I'm not mistaken? I mean, it's small. I could be wrong about that. I just remember seeing it, but yeah, it's. I don't think it's going to be great. So, in terms of Boyle, but yeah, I have seen him live, and I've seen him live when he's on. And this was several years ago, but I'm seeing a guy throwing 99 to 100 with this nasty slider, worked in a cutter. I mean, it was insane. He had just the loudest stuff, arguably, that I've ever seen live. So if the Rays can somehow get him in the strike zone, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be insane. And I love what the Rays have done dating back to the trade deadline, specifically bringing in three arms, Jackson Baumeister, Dylan Lesko, and now Joe Boyle, because they're getting these loud stuff guys who have had issues for one reason or another, but they reloaded their pitching. And it's not just those three guys, but those three guys they've acquired recently. And I'm like, my gosh, them in Tampa could be really, really fun. So in general, I like what Tampa's done to kind of reload this pitching, and Joe Boyle could be fantastic if the Rays if the Rays can focus it up a little bit, get more in the zone, whatever it is, because he has loud stuff and it is scary when he's on.
The West Sacramento ballpark, or Sutter Health Park, is 325 down the right field line and 330 down the left field line, 403 to dead center.
So I was completely wrong.
But what's
all right? The ball's going to fly though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's still short.
Yeah.
And so what's funny is that, as I'm doing a quick Google search just to find those actual numbers, of course, the actual Sacramento State baseball stadium dimensions came up, and their stadium is 375 to the gap. So it's like they're pretty much playing in or 333 down the left and right field lines. So it's like they're playing in a college stadium. Like these dimensions aren't much different than this college stadium that's played right down the street as well. So to your point, Kevin, I'm on that same bandwagon, and Trevor, you seem to be in the same way, avoiding pitchers that are going to be playing half their games in West Sacramento. Cool. So we got another trade that went down here, this time between the New York Yankees and the Chicago Cubs. Less prospects involved in this one. This was actually a fun one. Shout out to Sarah Ling for pointing this out. The first time in Major League Baseball history that a Cody was traded for another Cody. That was an amazing stat. And, she always has so many good stats.
Baseball
out there,
is the best.
It really is. But this, of course, the Cody's in question here. Cody Bellinger traded to the New York Yankees for pitcher Cody Petit. Going to be spending the rest of 2025, presumably, with the Cubs. Trevor, I'll let you start it off here because there aren't any prospects on this one. So obviously, I'm going to pass this one to you. What's, well, first of all, is Bellinger playing the outfield? Is he playing first base? What do you expect to see out of him in a Yankees uniform? Now, assuming again he stays there all season.
I don't know. I have not been able to wrap my head around this trade for either side. It's just, if you're the Cubs, why are you not okay keeping all the talent? I guess maybe to get rid of a lefty bat. I do think that Bellinger probably will play outfield, unless I don't know who's first base right now. Is that Ben Rice? So
yeah,
I think maybe Bellinger ends up in the outfield. He might end up at first. He's probably going to do a little bit of both. I wonder how this would affect Jason Dominguez. I assume he still has a spot, but also they've kind of shied away from him at the end of last season. I don't think that was intentional. I think he was just trying to get back on track. But I think there's a lot of moving parts here, but I like it for Cody Bellinger. I mean, Yankee Stadium's a fun place to play for a hitter. Especially if you can, just get the ball in the air with a little bit of pop. And Poteet, I don't get that at all. I guess you just get another bullpen arm if you're Chicago, but he had a good ERA last year. I guess I didn't realize that. He just has never seemed like a guy that pops off the page for me for any reason. So I don't have a whole lot to say here because I just don't get it.
Poteet, not only
it was a salary dump, but yeah.
Well, yeah, they also threw $5 million toward the Yankees to acquire Poteet. So, I mean, yeah, salary dump, all that, but still, as I pull up Cody Bellinger's process plus chart rolling chart from last year, he kind of made some strides toward the very end of the season, but nothing above average here. Kevin, you've been a strong proponent of avoiding Cody Bellinger going into 2025, playing in Yankee Stadium for half of his games. Does that make any difference to you? And I hear all the rumors that the Yankees are also going strong after a first baseman. They don't really have one at the moment. I'm kind of the opinion that Bellinger fits that role kind of nicely for them if he's willing to, move and play that position more regularly. What are your thoughts on Bellinger specifically in New York?
Yeah, I think they left their options open, right? By signing Cody Bellinger when they need a center fielder and a first baseman means they're still looking at a larger player pool throughout the rest of the offseason. I think that had a lot to do with it. Yes, I am not a big Cody Bellinger fan. I know he put up a 4-win season in 2023. And it was a nice season, almost 100 RBI and 100 runs scored, mid-20s home runs, 20 stolen bases, hit over 300. It was a nice season. But for the most part, Cody Bellinger is a name on everybody's mind because of 1 month of baseball in 2019. I've said that here plenty of times, and I'll continue to say it. He's a name to me. So when I heard about him going to the Yankees and it was official, we kind of thought it was happening. I thought, yeah, probably 22 home runs, double-digit stolen bases, 75 runs, 75 RBI. Steamer now has him at 23 home runs, 72 runs, 80 RBI, 12 stolen bases. So I'm right on page with those projections. And his draft price is going to skyrocket. We talk about the New York effect and influence on drafts and fab bids all the time on this show. I was already out on Cody Bellinger. And while this change to Yankee Stadium is going to be beneficial and intrigues me, the price is going to skyrocket. So I'm just not wasting my time and I'm staying out.
Yeah, he's been hovering as I pull up his ADP chart on the NFBC platform. He's been hovering right around the 100 mark for pretty much the last 2 months, though he does have a handful of 75, 80 marks.
Yep.
So we're a
Over the
good,
last 3-4 days.
a good round and a half bump after this trade was announced. All right, one more trade that didn't actually happen. Kevin, I'm going to lead you off here with this one. Nolan Arenado apparently, supposedly, blocked a trade that was ready to go between St. Louis and Houston that would have obviously sent Arenado to be Houston's new starting third baseman. The rumors have it that he didn't want to make that decision this early in the offseason, though he could revisit it come, say, February, where we get closer to spring training. Can you draft Arenado on that assumption that something like this could happen? And does that actually change being somewhere besides St. Louis, specifically in Houston? Does that change the value of Arenado in your eyes?
I don't think so. I don't think this really affects my opinion of Arenado. Um, I think it's a very similar projection to Cody Bellinger. In fact, it looks almost identical. Runs, RBI, home runs, and batting average, just not the double-digit stolen bases.
Mm-hmm.
And so a trade to Houston once again would send him soaring up by at least probably a round and a half in drafts, and I'm already not drafting him. So once again, it really doesn't affect me on Arenado. I think this is speaking more to Houston, right? And like I said last week when we brought this up, we've been hearing for 2-3 years now about all these people in the development of the Houston organization have been leaving for other teams, and Eno Saris has told me he's not really sure that they're going to survive this, the Houston Astros, as a without a dip until they rebuild it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you see them trading away Kyle Tucker, like I said last week, making a move like a non-contender makes, we got to get something from this guy rather than let's get what we can get out of him for this final year. And now you have somebody with a profile of what a guy that hit 16 home runs right now, not accepting a trade. Things look ugly for Houston, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, as Trevor put here in the notes, Katie Wu mentioned that that he could revisit this later on in the offseason.
Mhm.
Like I guess my question is like, yeah, you might be avoiding him now, but if in your mind this trade happens or it did happen, in your head canon, and you think that value now has bumped up to what it's currently at. If he were to move to Houston, do you pull the trigger now, thinking that you actually got some kind of value, or you don't think that his move to Houston bumps him up to where his current draft position is?
I am looking at Gladiators drafted over the last 2 weeks. Nolan Arenado is not being drafted as a starting third
Right.
baseman.
Mm-hmm.
He is being drafted, and he's 16th for third base eligible players. So maybe he is a starting third baseman. Berger could be first base, Westberg second, Jazz can play the outfield. So I guess I would have to say he is barely in a 15-team league being drafted as a starting third baseman. I'm not comfortable with him on my roster until I know where he lands, even as a corner.
Yep.
So if in your scenario, if you believe he's going to end up with the Astros, be somewhere I don't think he'd be the cleanup hitter, but if he's somewhere towards the middle of that lineup, that they still have guys around. The runs and RBI will be there, even if we don't get back to 30 home runs. He probably gets between 15 and 20. Yeah, because is right now he's a 15th round draft pick in a 15-team league on average. If you believe that that is where he's going to end up, that's probably an okay spot. But without knowing, And the way, I mean, when a player says I'll revisit this later in the off season, the team's not going to wait around for him
Oh,
to
yeah,
decide.
sure.
They're going to go figure out who their third baseman is going to be in 2025. So I highly doubt he ends up in Houston. And I need to know the landing spot. I know I always say I'd rather react to the landing spot than try to predict it, because 95% of the time we're wrong, and then I made a uninformed decision. And I'm really sticking to that here with Arenado, because yeah, Houston would be a great landing spot, but there's some spots he may end up taking a deal that wouldn't be so great.
Sure. All right. Well, that's enough on the trades and the non-trades. We'll get to a couple signings, and I will let Trevor continue talking about the White Sox. But before we do that, we're gonna take another quick break. All right, Trevor. As promised, I get to lead you off here with some more White Sox talk. Bryce Wilson signs a 1-year deal with the White Sox. He should be competing for a rotation spot. Shocking, I know. With the Chicago White Sox. Do you expect him to win, and do you expect him to keep a rotation spot throughout the 2025 season?
Yes to everything. Here's name any White Sox starting pitcher right now. They traded Crochet. Name any of them.
No, thank you. I don't want to play this game.
Right? So at this point, I say that,
Drew
and
Thorpe.
it sounds awful. I know it sounds awful, but right now you're looking at a rotation that has Drew Thorpe, Jonathan Cannon, probably Sean Burke, Davis Martin. It's all these guys who are not coming in with giant prospect pedigree and not coming in, thinking you're going to have a top flight guy. Now, is Bryce Wilson a top flight guy? Not really, but he was, he had a 4.04 ERA and 104 innings last year. So he's going to fill innings for a team. And of course the White Sox have their pitchers coming. They just drafted Hagen Smith. They have Noah Schultz, who looks, Noah Schultz looks every bit your next top guy. Okay. But, look, I named these guys. So there are other guys. They have other pitchers like Nestrini's still kicking around there. Kai Bush is out there. They have names, but the problem is none of them are proven. And right now, the only guy who's proven that he's going to consistently pitch at any level is Bryce Wilson. And I think that means he probably gets a spot. He may even be the opening day starter.
That is a strong possibility, especially obviously with Crochet out of the picture here. And as you kind of alluded to in your comment there, I did have the roster resource rotation up here on the screen. I'm going to scroll back up and reference that. They assume Jonathan Cannon will end up being the opening starter, but it's really kind of up in the air here. Stranger things have happened. There have been stranger opening day starters for sure. I kind of assume it'll be somebody like Thorpe or Martin end up getting the ball on the first day, just because of, the prospect quote pedigree, or they traded for him and they were a name and what have you. But is this, Kevin, is this a rotation that you're just completely ignoring, like pretending that there are only, there's one less rotation to actually draft from? Or is there any name in the White Sox or potential White Sox rotation that you kind of have your eye on as a dark horse?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Drew Thorpe, in spite of I took it pretty bad. I've said it before, when he got ambushed in Seattle for 10 runs with giving up 1 out. I thought it was a fluke and rolled him out the next game against Kansas City, and he got shelled in the first inning again.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think I'd be completely off of him, but I'm a fan of Drew Thorpe, and coming off missing some time with injury, I'm hoping he'll build it back up. Here's the great thing about the Chicago White Sox pitching staff: nobody wants any of them.
Yeah.
We don't have to draft them. And the narrative of how bad the White Sox are is so strong that even if guys do start to perform fairly well, I don't think anybody's running to grab them, but then I will. So I think that's the advantage we have with the White Sox, usually waiting to see I don't believe in that. I think the players are going to get snagged out from underneath you if you try that. But with the White Sox organization, I think the narrative is so strong that we don't want anybody. That if there's somebody I want to keep an eye on, I feel comfortable being able to watch them for a couple of games before I make a move.
Trevor,
Can I add? I actually think the White Sox are super interesting. I do. I make a lot of jokes about them for 2025 fantasy purposes because it's a train wreck for this year. But they have a lot of really interesting guys who are right on the cusp of becoming major leaguers. Probably will get a chance sometime in 2025, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about more of them later. But I think they've done a good job stocking up their farm system, and even a guy like to use a comment we have here, Prelander Baroa, they got him recently, and he's in the bullpen, but he has loud stuff and could be a back end of a bullpen kind of guy. So thank you to Uncle Ted for that comment. But it's true. They have a lot of these talented guys that could be really fun, but there's a lot of could be right now. They had a lot of could be when they had Moncada, Robert, Eloy Jimenez, at the top of their farm system. So there's still a lot of questions, but there is a lot. It's fun. I was going through their top prospects for Fantrax, and I was having a lot of fun trying to figure out who goes where. And so they have something going for them. It's just not in 2025 for fantasy baseball.
So the other comment that Uncle Ted made here is just a shout out to Noah Schultz, as their top prospect coming up, not on the 40-man roster. But I did, I noticed that the projected rotation is completely filled with right-handed pitchers. Is there a possibility, Trevor, that the White Sox kind of they shake it up and Noah Schultz does something really great in spring training and he jumps the line and makes his way into the rotation just to make a splash?
I absolutely want to say yes, but I absolutely don't think so. Just because they are so far away from contention, they're probably just going to want that extra year window. So they might be more careful with him or at least bring him up later in the year. If they want a lefty, they have Eater and they have, they're right here. Eater and Kai Bush, both are lefties that are on the 40-man roster. And so they'll probably get that run if they feel like they need a lefty in the rotation. But Noah Schultz is absolutely insane and so good. So tall, but also just lanky, throws hard, great slider, and just one of the better pitching prospects that I have had the opportunity to see.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I'm thinking is, after the success of that the Pittsburgh Pirates just had, bringing up Jaron Jones to make the opening day roster, obviously Paul Skeens winning Rookie of the Year. There's got to be at least some recency bias for pitchers having the ability to not only win Rookie of the Year, but also get that extra draft pick. Skeens didn't win his team the Rookie of the Year because they didn't actually make the call at the beginning. Sorry, he didn't win them that extra draft pick even after winning the award because he didn't make the opening day roster. So I wonder if that plays into their thought process whatsoever.
It might. And my thought process with this, just to make it very simple, is that the White Sox don't have the pieces in place like the other teams seem like they kind of had. Like if you go to the Pirates, they had O'Neal Cruz. That's one piece that they had there. The White Sox have pieces, but I don't think they have their like cornerstone piece in place to try to make the move to throw Schultz out there and just start his clock. And he's definitely ready. I think he could absolutely pitch in the majors this year. It's just, I don't know when they're going to want to start that clock just because of competitive window reasons. And I hope I'm wrong. And I hope he's in the majors all year. And people go, Trevor, you're an idiot. I'm never listening to you again. That would be awesome because Noah Schultz is a lot of fun.
Fair enough.
No, I agree with you, Trevor. The problem is, as such a large percentage of the time, we can legitimately sit here and complain about why teams aren't calling players up. But with the situation that the White Sox are in coming off their 2024, I don't think anybody could be upset if we don't see Noah Schultz in 2025. It makes sense. They would be wasting service time.
Yeah. Fair enough. Let's move into a non-guaranteed contract here. Bryce Wilson guaranteed 1 year. Atlanta, though, signing Brian De La Cruz to a non-guaranteed 1 year contract. Presumably, he'll at least compete for a spot through spring training and see what happens from there. Kevin, does Brian De La Cruz have a role to play in the Atlanta lineup?
He might. I was really excited about Brian De La Cruz coming into 2024, and it worked out. He was amazing in the first half. He was on pace for a 30 home run season, decent batting average. Things were looking great. Started to slow down at the beginning of the second half, and then when the trade to Pittsburgh, he just fell apart and eventually lost playing time and everything. I think this is a depth move for Atlanta, but one that could really work out for both them and those rostering Brian De La Cruz in fantasy or ready to pick him up as soon as it is apparent he's getting that playing time. I mean, they're gonna give the higher pedigree prospect probably a little stronger look, but De La Cruz and Kelnick were nearly identical numbers as far as underlying numbers in 2024, with De La Cruz actually looking a little better on the results side. And that was coming back a little bit from the improvements we saw from him in 2023. Lowered his strikeout rate, raised his walk rate. Things were looking really good. I really thought we were looking at like a 25 home run guy, decent batting average, 75 runs, 75 RBIs in Miami. Now in Atlanta, it's going to be all about, does he get that job? If he does, it's because he is doing well and he's at least looking better than Kelnick, right? So this is definitely something to monitor throughout the spring in drafting holds. I have been drafting Brian De La Cruz, and in a fab draft, he is the type of guy I would use a late round pick on, knowing that if he does not get the job, I can replace him first week of the season. If he does get the job, then I'm going to maybe not start him right away, but definitely hold on and see how things look.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I'm pulling up here the roster resource lineup, they don't have a competition between Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz.
They got them both.
They got them both in the lineup full time, no platoons, which maybe that's just hasn't been updated yet.
Well, Atlanta,
they still have. I was just looking at
9 guys out every week, every game. Yeah.
They still have Acuna on the IL, so that's where the competition is coming in.
Fair enough. So take all of this stuff in the off season with as big of a grain of salt as you possibly need as you're doing your research. This is just me trying to show off like all the things that could go wrong as you're researching through things. So that's all that was. Is there anything that kind of stands out for you, Trevor, with De La Cruz in Atlanta? Or is this more of a wait? Are you on the wait and see type of bandwagon to see kind of how this all shakes out?
Still wait and see. I think what stands out is that Kelenic is only 25 years old. It feels like he should be much older than that. But no, it's just wait and see. A lot of times with these types of signings, especially when they're outfielders, I don't play in any leagues where I have specific outfield positions. So there's a lot of outfielders. So I'm willing to wait and see. And if I miss on someone like that, I can probably find somebody else similar to help out. So worth waiting to see if you get a job, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, as I flip through De La Cruz and Kelenic's process plus chart, they don't look a whole lot different from each other. So we'll kind of see.
When I picked up Jared Kelenic in 2024, right before everything goes south of the line,
right here, yeah.
That's how it goes.
Right around August 1st, yeah.
I'm guessing the upticks are where you put them on your bench.
Exactly. Thank you for that. All right. Well, we'll stick with Atlanta here in an indirect way. They, we talked about a couple weeks ago, they made that trade for Griffin Canning with the Angels, but then they decided to non-tender him a contract, and he goes and signs with the NL East rival New York Mets on a 1-year deal. Trevor, the Mets are making all the moves here. Do you like this move not only for the Mets but for Canning as well?
I do like it for Canning. I think it's really interesting. It's probably a product of when I was first like getting into prospects. Griffin Canning was a pitching prospect at the time that you just kind of heard about. Um, and I didn't look into him a whole lot then, but he just always is in my mind as a guy who can be very good and can help you. And I like him going to the Mets for one reason that has absolutely no sort of statistical backing at all. David Stearns, who is in charge with the Mets, right? I mean, he was in Milwaukee when the pitching lab kind of started. So I think he brings with him a track record of being able to help pitchers. And I think that Griffin Canning kind of fits a mold of what he's been able to, or what his teams in the past have been able to have be successful. So I think there's a reason for optimism with Griffin Canning signing in a David Stearns run organization, and he's still fairly young, if I'm not mistaken, 28 years old. So there's still time for him to be good, and he has been good in the past. So yeah, I if they can unlock something, and I think they can, then there's real reason to be excited about Griffin Canning.
Nice. Yeah. It's always the name that seems to pop, especially last year, just seemed to pop up all the time on my, waiver wire. And he was held for like a couple of weeks here or there, and then somebody would drop him. And then he played like in at least one of my leagues. I feel like he played on 8 of the 12 teams throughout the course of the season. So I think he gets a little bit more name recognition being now on the Mets and getting a little bit more of a spotlight, especially if he holds on to that rotation spot. Kevin, feel free to chime in on Griffin Canning, but I'm also going to pivot and stay in the NL West as I'm realizing that I don't know if these came in while we started recording, but there's like 4 more news signings that happened since I made this outline. So we still got quite a bit to talk about. But staying in the NL East here, Mike Soroka signs with the Washington Nationals as well. I guess we can do this a little bit of a mini comparison. Which one do you like more, Griffin Canning in the Mets or Mike Soroka playing with the Nationals?
Ooh, completely different concerns about both.
Absolutely.
That's a great question. Let me put it this way. This is a cop-out, but let me put it this way. I think the safer play, although it's not very safe, is Mike Soroka. I think we have seen him be good when healthy, and after the major injury when he was in Kansas City a couple of years ago, he was really good in Kansas City. Griffin Canning is a guy that I just can't quit, and I probably should, but I can't.
I just said that.
I'm
with you.
Yeah, it's. A few years ago, 2020 is when I was really on the Griffin Canning train. I thought he was going to be. I thought Griffin Canning was going to be what Seth Lugo was in 2024. Throw all these pitches, be a low ratios, decent strikeouts, but not outstanding. I really thought Griffin Canning was going to be what Seth Lugo was in 2024 for a career. That's what I thought of Griffin Canning, and just injuries and things have sidetracked him. So I'm still in. So that's where I would go. But I do like Mike Soroka, and I think that's the safer play, and I think he probably has a spot in the Nationals rotation.
Since December 1st, of all types of drafts, there are both kind of quote free going past pick 663. But that is Griffin Canning going at 663, and then Mike Soroka goes another 100 picks later. Though
I saw a great post today. $9 million is back end of rotation or closer money. And that's what Soroka got. So it's one of those moves in a draft and hold. It doesn't matter which way it goes. It's still beneficial.
It's still valuable,
right?
Yep.
Seems like a prove it deal. Like I think him signing was contingent on him getting a rotation role. So
give me the opportunity, and I will come pitch for you that much money. Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, total classic there.
So that's a safe play once again.
Fair enough. All right. Well, a couple of other hitters came off the market, and we'll get to both of those right after this third break. All right, Trevor, I'm going to lump these two together, get your take on both of them, as they both kind of came across my desk while we were talking earlier. Max Kepler signs with the Philadelphia Phillies, and then on the other coast, Gio Urshela is also going to be playing in West Sacramento alongside Jeffrey Springs and all them. Which one of these guys do you think carves themselves into a regular role that we can actually think about, drafting them either as our, fourth or fifth outfielder or our, corner infielder?
I think the easier answer is probably Urshela with the Athletics, just in terms of where the teams are at, but also that's tough because the Athletics right now run a pretty young and pretty good core. The question is who's going to play third base for him. It could be Urshela. It could be I think Daryl Hernandez would be the option as of right now, unless I'm mistaken. Maybe they want Max Muncy to play it if they call him up. So it's tough, and I want to venture that they would go with the younger guy. I got to see Urshela in a similar type role in Detroit, where he might be the guy that starts for half a year, and then a prospect shows up, and all of a sudden out he goes. Hey, Daryl Hernandez. So, sorry, he keeps pulling up. So it's a shiny object in front of me.
Yeah.
And Kepler is, I mean, I don't even know. I don't, where would he go in Philly? I guess I haven't put much thought to it, to be honest. But I guess he could slot into right field. There's not really a whole lot unless, Johan Rojas takes that spot. So it's possible. I think I'm going to go Max Kepler. That's my answer. I think Urshela's short term, maybe get another prospect because they're trying to go young, and the Phillies obviously are going to want to compete. So if Max Kepler slots in, then Max Kepler probably is in a better situation. That was a long walk to get to a simple answer, and that's my bad. But Max Kepler, final answer. Buzz it in.
Kevin, phone a friend here. Are you giving the same kind of final answer here? As we update the Gio Urshela one literally just came across the desk somewhat recently, so they haven't updated lineups over at Roster Resource, but they do seem to be slotting a Max Kepler in, at least in a large side of a platoon role, playing right field for the Phillies. Do you expect that to stick for Kepler?
I think at least the large side of the platoon will stick for Kepler. And Gio Urshela, man, these are the guys I don't want to talk about during draft season. These are the guys I want to talk about on our Fab shows in season, right? Because Urshela was such a great pickup late in the year when he was with Atlanta. He put in some valuable work. We didn't get a lot of power, but the counting stats and the batting average, at least not a batting average that will hurt you, were there. Kepler, you probably have to draft him if you want him on your roster. And if it is a platoon, then, I stick to my, that I think this can be overblown, but it does mean you have to be the type of player that you are putting a lot of time into your team and really paying attention to the plate appearances and matchups that plate appearances they have been getting and matchups coming up. If you're going to draft someone like Max Kepler. Gio Urshela, we don't have to draft him. We can pick him up if he does begin to get the playing time. But if you're willing to have that extra maintenance on your roster, I think Max Kepler's fine. But you will have to draft him. I don't think he will be available in Fab once the season gets started.
Yeah, I mean, as I pull up Gio Urshela's process chart from last season, it was just surprising, I guess, to see this, just because we talked about that opportunity he got as he moved into a role with Atlanta, where he was going. You thought that there was like a clear cut opportunity for him for playing time. Obviously did not pan out, at least in the power department, got worse in the last month or two in the season as well. So we'll see if anything changes in West Sacramento for Urshela going into 2025. All right. Well, that that sums up finally all the news and notes, and to think that we came out of an entire news episode after the winter meeting thinking
It's been a fun couple of weeks.
it's been fun. But now let's get into the main topic here. As I kind of talked about at the very beginning, we want to see what kind of, there's always prospects that are going to shoot up throughout season as the hype kind of gets going. But we see a lot of other prospects getting, whether they be rookie eligible or straight prospects with no major league experience, getting darts thrown at them throughout, especially draft and Holtz and Kevin. We talked about how quietly pessimistic we need to start being when it comes to like filling our rosters with these dart throws. So I'm going to put you guys to the test here with some groupings of players.
I disagree. Sorry, I disagree. Throw the darts.
You would.
Throw the darts.
Just make sure you hit the balloon and get the prize. That's the thing, is most of those balloons don't have prizes in them at the fair. So we'll start off in the earlier rounds, though, spoiler alert, the earliest rounds were really the earliest picks we're talking about an ADP of just shy of 400 in most drafts. So the ADPs that I threw out here throughout this next section are going to be revolving around all drafts on the NFBC platform from December 1st onward. So take that with whatever size grain of salt you need to. So first, before we get into an actual grouping, Trevor, the highest rated rookie player that I'm seeing go based on ADP, he stands alone with an ADP of 142. That's Dylan Cruz. What are your overall expectations for Cruz? Does he meet this expectation in ADP just shy of 150? Or does he fall? You have to put on your logic hat here, Trevor, not your wishful thinking, love all prospects cap. And does he fit the bill as somebody who can, outproduce that ADP? Or are you kind of staying away if you're actually thinking about this logically?
No, I think he absolutely will hit it, if not exceed it. Logically speaking, he's been a name that has been around for a long time, right? Everybody knew who he was when he was at LSU. He was a clear-cut number one pick in the draft, and then that didn't, whatever. So I think he's going to, I do think he's going to hit it and exceed it. And it's power, it's speed, and he can hit the ball, even though he only hit 218 in his short MLB stint last year, got 132 plate appearances. He struck out less than 20% of the time, still hit 3 home runs, still can steal some bases for you. And so a learning curve doesn't scare me, right? His low batting average learning curve is not worrisome to me. His walk rate was pretty steady as to what it was in the minors. So I think it's just about him figuring it out and starting to actually hit the ball a little bit harder. And I think he has the exact skill set to do that. And then you get some power, you get some steals. He can be a guy who contributes in a lot of ways. Just, he just needs to hit the ball a little bit better. And he's not lost, right? 19.7% strikeout rate isn't lost at the plate. He's still putting the ball in play. And that even, I guess it's a little higher than it was in AA, but it's lower than he had at any level before that. So I do think that he's worth it there, and I would certainly be buying, and that is with bias included, but I would do it.
Kevin, we've seen, throughout the last couple seasons, there's always at least one, if not 2 or 3 names that find their way inside the top 100. As far as like Bobby Witt Jr. when he came up, we got Jackson Holliday, Wyatt Langford competing for that last year. Do you expect Dylan Cruz seems to be, and unless I'm missing somebody really obvious, and please call me out on if I am, Cruz seems to be the top guy right now and hovering around 142 ADP. He is steadily moving up draft boards. If you look at the last couple months of drafts, do you expect him to kind of the hype to continue to climb and him to crack the top 100 And if so, are you still in, or were you in to begin with?
Oh, I'm in. Like Trevor said, we've been seeing Dylan Cruz for a while, and my prospect love comes from my love of college baseball. So I watched him play quite a bit. I'm still in. Um, he got his cup of coffee the year he got drafted, right? Or no, not quite, but all the way to AAA, right on the cusp, and was performing so well. So in 2024, uh, it may have seemed like a little bit of a disappointment, maybe, that he didn't get more major league plate appearances there at the end of the season. But no, I'm all in on Dylan Cruz still. I think 10th round in a 15-team league is a steal because he got those valuable plate appearances at the end of 2024. That can only help, right? We're looking at guys like guys that have graduated but still very close to rookie eligibility, right? The guys like Westberg and going well ahead of him. This I have never really been the type of player that will draft a rookie in the early rounds. As much as I love Bobby Witt Jr. and was traveling to go see him play in Double A for Northwest Arkansas, I didn't draft him when he came up. I drafted him the year before he came up when I thought he was going to. But I think where Dylan Cruz is going there, 10th round of a 15-team league, 100% I am in on taking a shot right there.
All right. All right, now we'll finally get to the game here, guys. And we have a lot of groupings. I may skip a couple because we have way too many. But let's at least start lightning rounding.
You were
here.
worried about us making it to an hour and a half.
I was worried we were going to go way over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let's stick this grouping is the earliest groupings here, all hovering just shy of an ADP of 400 though. And so Kevin, I'm going to let you set the stage here so Trevor can then jump off of that to make sure we get the rules right here. These are two Boston prospects going back to back and then followed by a Cubs third baseman. So Roman Anthony, outfielder for the Red Sox, 383. Christian Campbell, second base, middle infield, at 393. And then Matt Shaw playing third base for the Cubs, possibly on opening day, at 399. So, Kevin, of course, as a recap for anybody out there listening and watching, we're playing Ask, Avoid, Stream, Keep. You have to pick one of these guys you would completely avoid, even in a 50-round draft and hold. One of these guys you can stream, aka you would pick them maybe with your last pick in a Fab League or draft them or pick them up in Fab early on in the season and throughout. And the other one you have to draft on a Gladiator, aka they'll be in your starting lineup all year round and you're stuck. So which one of these guys fits into each category here?
Gosh, I hate to do this. I really do.
I want to keep all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. But due to what is happening to his draft price, I'm going to avoid Matt Shaw here. His ADP is listed as 318. In DCs over the past couple of weeks, right? But when you look at his page, like we've been talking all off season, when you click on his name and look at the graph of where he's being drafted, he was drafted 57th on the 13th of December, right after this move was
that you, Trevor?
That is definitely an outlier. But here's his other picks, right? The next earliest 177. Right. So now I kind of get it. 198, 200, 201. Right. He is already moving pretty comfortably inside the top 200. And I expect this to continue. I expect him to be solidly inside the top 200. And then if we hear official news from the Cubs that he is indeed the starting third baseman, or if they sign him to an extension, right,
Sure,
a la
right.
Jackson Churio last season, he's probably going inside the top 100. And I want no part of this. I don't want any part of it at 200 right now. So, unfortunately, as much as I like Matt Shaw, he's my avoid. So now we get to talk about your two Red Sox
There you
here,
go.
and I think both these guys, Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell, can be really good for your Red Sox. I really feel like Roman Anthony gets the call sooner, so he's my keep, and Christian Campbell's my stream. It's that simple for me. I love Matt Shaw, but I do not love where his price is and where it's going to go.
Yeah, both Shaw, as you said, skyrocketing already. Never mind when he actually gets a kind of an announcement. Campbell, as you can see from the chart here, steadily rising as I
Mhm.
think people just start, realizing or hearing the name a lot more and more, and they start looking into it. The Red Sox, as good as that, the whole up down the middle of their prospect ranks has gotten, how much better it's gotten. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of options. And I do worry about the playing time for any of these guys, no matter how good they actually are. Trevor, I put the ball in your court. Do you rearrange these guys, or are you taking them in the same order as Kevin?
No, I'll rearrange them. And one of the reasons that I'll rearrange them, and one of the reasons that I'm not very good at fantasy baseball, is that ADP. Thanks for having me on your show. I'll leave now. No, ADPs don't really deter me. I'm a go get your guys kind of fantasy baseball player. So if I believe in the talent and I have to get him at a certain point, then I'm going to take him at a certain point, and that's just how I roll. And it's not smart because then you wind up missing on a lot. Anyway, I am going to keep Matt Shaw. I want to keep all of them, but I'm going to keep Matt Shaw for the simple reason that as of right now, it looks like if I'm in a draft and hold, it looks like I'm going to get consistent and like production from him all year.
Mm-hmm.
He might start from the jump, and I don't think Roman Anthony or Christian Campbell are going to. So for that reason, I think that I would keep Matt Shaw. I would stream Roman Anthony because he's probably the best prospect in baseball. He's up there in that conversation. So he's definitely a guy that I would want to have on my team, and I'd like to keep him, but I can't. And then I would, what's the last word? Cut, right?
Avoid. Yeah.
Avoid. Sorry, avoid. I would avoid Christian Campbell because I used up the other two options already.
That ends up being the reason for a lot of these picks. You're like, I only have 3 choices here. All
Can
right.
I change my answer?
Yeah.
But no, I actually have a point here. I'm not just joking because Trevor said Matt Shaw was his keep, but as I pulled up recent ADP here at third base, going after Matt Shaw, Jose Miranda, who I like, but we're probably looking at platoon bat. At least we have so far in his career. 50 picks later, Josh Smith, who, if everybody's healthy in Texas, doesn't have a spot. And then we're talking Kobe Mayo. So I think this is the good toss up, right? Kobe Mayo or Matt Shaw for 2025. I'd like to hear Trevor's thoughts on that, because if he's going Matt Shaw there, then Matt Shaw is not overpriced where he's being drafted right now, and I stand corrected.
Whew. That is, I'd be happy either way, just being completely honest.
Okay.
I think I would probably, oh gosh, top of my head, I'd probably go Matt Shaw because Baltimore infielders still scare me. You have Gunnar Henderson, you have Jackson Holiday, you have Jordan Westberg, and then you have Kobe Mayo. Then you have Samuel Basallo, who may not stick at catcher because, again, you have Adley. So
They've said Jorge Mateo is going to play every day in
you have
2025.
Jorge
That's what they're
Mateo,
saying
right? So
now.
there's
Yeah.
just so much crowded. There's just too many options for too little spots, and I think that's what veers me away from Kobe Mayo. Even though I think long term, I probably, like in a dynasty league, I may want Mayo over Matt Shaw. But if we're talking about just 2025, I think Matt Shaw's path to playing time makes him a better option for me.
All right. Well, then you guys changing the subject here made me rearrange the order in which we're going to do these groupings. So I'm gonna move to the Kobe Mayo group because he is in
Well,
one
we
of
did
these
have him
groups.
on here.
Yeah. So we'll, instead of comparing Kobe Mayo to Matt Shaw, Trevor, I'm going to have you compare him to Jace Young of Detroit, also third base eligible, and then Nick York, second base eligible for the Pittsburgh Pirates. These guys all have an ADP in the range of like 630 to 680 ish range, not being drafted in every draft, being late enough where they can be an option for you at any given point. But I ask you the same question here: York, Young, or Mayo? Which one are you avoiding keeping and streaming?
Oh man, this was probably the toughest group as I was looking at it, because every time I look at it, I change my mind.
Yeah.
I think. Oh gosh, we're just talking 2025. I probably
Just
avoid.
2025. Yes.
I probably avoid. I hate doing it, but I probably avoid Mayo for the same reasons I just said.
Mm.
Jace Young should have opportunity to play. Nick York should have opportunity to play. So the question for me is between those two, and I would take Kobe Mayo over any of them by far in a dynasty league. Don't get me wrong, but again, just 2025. I worry about his playing time a little too much, so I guess I avoid him. I would at that point. Is this an OBP league or an average league?
If you need to make the connotation, you can. That's fine.
If it's OBP, I probably wind up keeping Jace Young. If it's average, I probably go with York because I think I like York's ability to hit for average a little bit better. But again, I would be happy with any of the three. So just because I'm a Tigers fan, I'll keep Young
There you go.
for the sake of argument, and then stream York, and I'll avoid Kobe Mayo simply because where is he going to play?
Yeah, I mean, and one of the, at least for the keep, the rule is they have to be drafted in Gladiator. In Gladiator, you don't have a choice but to play him all year. So you won't need as much volume as possible. If you don't think he's going to play, he definitely can't volume your way into actual stats that matter. Kevin, between York, Young, and Mayo, are you rearranging them in any other order? What's your take here?
Yeah. So nearly every week I bring up Bubba and the Bloom, Casey Bubba and Ryan Bloomfield. And Ryan Bloomfield, a few weeks ago when they did their draft and hold primer episode, he had a breakdown. These numbers aren't going to be exact. I didn't look up what he said, but I'm going to paraphrase what this range of a draft. And I think he was talking after round 30 or 35, maybe even 40 in a draft and hold, which qualifies here. We're post round 40. And players, when you're drafting players in this spot, like rookies that have less than 100 plate appearances, only about 10% of them drafted, about 1 in 10 drafted in this range, return better value than where they're drafted. And we're not saying much when we're being drafted this late. But when we go to that group that has between 100 and 1,000 plate appearances, even if they weren't good, just the fact that they had plate appearances, that rate jumps to 30%, which 30% doesn't sound great, but that's a 300 hitter, right? We're talking Hall of Fame. So
fair enough.
He's slightly short, 94 plate appearances, but for that reason, I'm going Jace Young here. And because also I like Jace Young, but just that was added little incentive to he's the guy I'd probably rather take a shot on here. I am going to stream Mayo because I don't know when it will be, but I think we will see his next opportunity. Nick York, it's more I do think Pittsburgh is continuing to improve, but I just don't see a lot of plate appearances, them turning that lineup over. Detroit, we saw them make the postseason. They're on the upswing, right? Baltimore, they have an opportunity to compete for the division. So Um, I am not really confident in anything I just said, but due to the little bit we saw out of him last year, I'll keep Chase Young. I like Nick York, but I'm going to avoid him due to team context, and I will stream Kobe Mayo because I agree with Trevor. We don't know when we're going to see him. We don't know what we'll see when we do, but I think we will see him at times, which makes him my streamer.
I was already wondering actually what role Nick York was going to play for the Pirates. And then as I'm pulling this up on the screen, I've got their roster resource page. He's on a bench in a full-time bench role for them. And that is just confirmation bias for me, just because I wasn't exactly sure what role he was going to play in their lineup. Never mind play every day, as opposed to Jace Young, who seems to have a hold unless they make some kind of move in Detroit. And Trevor, you can tell me if you think that'll actually happen or not, to an everyday playing time or everyday role, at least at the hot corner for the Tigers.
This game hurts. I'm just going to say that first of all. Second of all, to answer the question that you actually asked, I don't. It's hard. I don't see them doing that. There was some buzz around them and Bregman, but they're not going to spend $200 million on a third baseman. They don't believe that's where they are right now. So I don't see anything blocking Jace Young from being an everyday third baseman, assuming he can hit enough. That's one of the scary parts about it. That's why earlier today he was the guy I was avoiding. But things change as you look at it. I already wanted to answer differently, but
it's already on the books.
Trevor, I know all the time.
I know. So
I tell Adam all the time, Trevor, if he asks me the same question tomorrow, I'll give him a different answer.
Yep. So I think he should have plenty of opportunity, and I guess I don't know. Nick York is tough, and so is Kobe Mayo. So I think by default I have to take Chase Young just because of the playing time between when stacked up against the other two.
Fair enough. All right, we got a lot more groups to get to, but we do have to take one more quick break. All right, let's get to some shortstops here that are all going post pick 500, post 530 even. Starting off with Jacob Wilson of I can't say Oakland. I gotta work on my shorthand for the Athletics. Here, Jacob Wilson, starting shortstop for the Athletics. Then Jordan Lawler in Arizona, followed by Luis Angel Acuna, the other Acuna, who made a big splash at the very end of last season, filling in for Francisco Lindor, and then sticking on the roster even after Lindor made his way back at the very end. Trevor, I'll let you lead us off here. Which middle infielder, or specifically shortstop prospect here, do you think makes the a big enough splash to keep him in a Gladiator? Which one are you streaming and which one are you avoiding?
Is this average or so? This is a hard one too for a lot of different reasons. I am and always will be a huge Jordan Lawler fan. I actually at one point, right before his first big injury, shoulder injury, I probably an hour before that news dropped, put a 70 on him as a prospect. Like I was all in on Jordan Lawler being one of the best players in baseball at some point. I believe it's there. He just keeps getting hurt. And since he keeps getting hurt, Perdomo's taken over that shortstop job in Arizona and by all accounts is probably going to keep it, which makes Lawler really hard to guess at. So I think this goes against everything I believe in, but I think I am going to, gosh. All right. I'm going to final answer. I'm going to keep Jacob Wilson just because playing time. Also, I really like his hit tool, and that gives him somewhat of a floor, especially if you're looking at a guy you're going to draft and hold. I am going to take Lawler as a stream, and then by default, I don't want to, but I'll avoid Acuna. And that's because I believe in Lawler's talent still, despite all the injuries.
Kevin, is the potential also playing time for Acuna also keeping him on your avoid list, or are you taking more of a chance here?
Unfortunately, yes. I like Acuna as well, but he is my avoid. I'm flipping the other two because at this price, I'm taking the shot on Lawler that 2024, we'll just throw it out. injuries and everything else he had to deal with. And Trevor's point about shortstop actually being somewhat blocked, even for a guy like Lawler, is extremely valid. But we're talking a year or two ago, the top prospect in baseball. And I think that it was just injuries were the reason 2024 is what we saw. I agree 100%. Jacob Wilson is getting the most playing time of these three.
Sure.
And great batting average.
If it's not a batting average
support
league, I'm with Kevin also, by the way, just to throw that out there.
Yeah, Jacob Wilson, he's going to be my stream just because I'm all in on Lawler at this price. I would take that shot. Jacob Wilson will get the most playing time and will be a nice batting average. And the ballpark and the lineup in Oakland, and then I think the county stats will be there as well, just not a lot of power. He may develop a little bit, but not a lot. So he's my streamer. Unfortunately, I agree with Trevor. I love Luis Angel Acuna, but he's my void here. And I say it all the time. I know I'm being hypocritical. I know it. Like another list, I'm going to say the exact opposite about a player. I'm sure I will. But for some reason, I'm just still all in on Jordan Lawler.
When Lawler was trying to work his way back toward the end of last season, we heard a couple of notes from the manager there that he had to be a little flexible if he wanted to get back in, and so there was an opportunity for him to get off a shortstop and play some third base or play some other positions. So as far as him being blocked at the position, Trevor, always a possibility if he's continuously able and willing to kind of move around, he could open up more playing time in that fashion.
Yeah, shout out Nate Kosher, a Diamondbacks fan, my podcast co-host. So we talk about Lawler frequently. So very well informed because I co-host with a D-backs fan.
There you go. All right. Well, Trevor, you said that this is getting harder. It's only going to get more difficult as we move into post 700 ADP range. So none of these guys are getting drafted in every draft. A lot of them are getting drafted in minimal drafts. I'm talking these 50-round draft and holds like Draft Champions, NFBC 50s and stuff like that. But we're talking the other side of the bag here at second base. Kevin, I'll let you lead us off here with this one. Aurelvis Martinez, who missed a bunch of time, obviously last year, keeps his rookie eligibility, playing second or being second base eligible for Toronto. And then staying in Toronto, Will Wagner, another second base eligible prospect there. And then in Colorado, we have Adael Amador, second base for the Rockies. So of these second base eligible players, who are you avoiding? Who are you keeping? Who are you streaming?
I'm not messing with Colorado Rockies prospects because no matter what we think and how right we are, they'll do something different. And unfortunately, Amador is my avoid. That's where I'll start here. I mentioned last week that Mike Curlin DM'd me after the previous week's episode. We were talking about Kyle Farmer, and he said not to sleep on Amador as I was we're talking about that. But then after last week, when I brought that up, as we were talking about the new Rockies depth chart, I got another DM that said, "Oh yeah, I'm out on Amador now after these other ads." Right? So
the Rockies are going to Rocky.
Unfortunately, yeah, they're, and that's just proven my point. I don't trust the Rockies when it comes to young players. These other two players, I think Will Wagner may have a quicker path to being in Toronto's lineup. And I love the power, but I like the overall play of Elvis Martinez more. And we might not see him quite as quickly as Wagner, but I do think we see him and see him regularly fairly early in 2025. So, like I said, I'm like I was just telling Trevor, I'm a hypocrite at this. I think Will Wagner has the clearest path to early playing time in 2025 but I'm still going to go with Martinez. I like his overall game better. Love Wagner's power, but I think it might be. I think we're going to see Martinez. I think we'll see Wagner before Martinez, but I think we'll see better production overall out of Martinez.
All right. Trevor, before you give your answer here, I want to throw in a little bit of a curveball. I did give you warning that I might do this before we start recording. So I'm going to give Trevor the ability to make a swap if he so deems another player that fits this bill better suited for this game. So if there is another second baseman who should probably be going very late in these drafts, or considered for these late picks, you can swap him in for one of these players if you are having too much difficulty making your decision. You don't have to use the money ball if you don't want to. If you want to stick with this threesome, you can. But I'm also curious to know if there's any other second baseman out there that that aren't on this list that are worth discussing as well. So I'll put that in your camp. Relvis Martinez, Will Wagner, both of Toronto, and then Adael Amador of Colorado are the names on the list. So using that as your base, where are you going with these guys?
Oh gosh, you used first baseman as the example for when you might use this wild card, so I prepared that.
You don't have to use the money ball. You have more than one money ball too, by the way. You don't have to.
Okay.
Just,
I think I might use the money ball. But before I do that, I'm going to answer this question as is. And that is, I'm going to keep Amador. Just completely disagree with Kevin. I'm going to keep Amador because I love his hit tool, and he's 21 years old right now. So I do think that he gets a path, has another chance in 2025, and I hope it goes well. And I think the reason that is an easy choice for me is because of Andres Gimenez. The Blue Jays just traded for him, and if we're talking about this specific second base position, that's a problem. So I think Will Wagner probably gets more playing time early. He could maybe a little bit more versatility, so he'll slot in as I keep forgetting the wording, but the stream. Thank you for my brain. I'll stream him, and that leaves Relvis. And the reason that I would choose to avoid Relvis is just because I get scared, especially in redraft leagues, about guys who miss extended periods of time in a season. That's just a personal thing for me. So for the spirit of the game, I'm going to swap him out for, let's say, Juan Brito with the Guardians. With the Gimenez trade happening, that opens up a spot for him, and he's been a guy who I've kind of liked his production, but it's like, where is he going to go? Because Cleveland has a lot of infielders. But 256 in high A last year, hit 21 home runs, stole 13 bases. I think that if he's in there, I probably put him in as the stream, and then I will avoid Will Wagner. But that's just because I would have to. I like Juan Brito a little bit just because of this trade. So I think if I was going to play it that way, that's how that would play out.
That's a perfect fit. Well done on that. Going right around the
that's
same
awesome.
ADP at 725, second base eligible, man, and rookie eligible. Well done, Trevor.
And only drafted a handful of times before the move, supporting exactly what Trevor's saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that chart I had up there, a whole lot of nothing in November, and then after the move, got a couple of drafts in there, right, just past the 400, the 500 mark.
Trevor was drafting him in October.
There, yeah, those were those four mixed.
I was not. I tend to avoid Guardians infielders, just prospects at least, just because who knows what's going to happen. But so that was not me. I will not take credit for that.
But you will take a Colorado prospect infielder and be super comfortable with that.
Hey, he's got a good hit tool and the ball flies. Who knows what's going to happen? I'll live with it.
All right.
I love this.
Let's get another Boston middle infield prospect in the books here for you guys to talk about. Marcelo Mayer, the shortstop for the Red Sox. followed by, these are more shortstops, by the way, all around. Carson Williams of Tampa Bay, and then Jet Williams of the New York Mets. So, Trevor, which Williams are you taking of this shortstop bunch first and foremost, and then you got the money ball still, by the way. If you see another shortstop out there late, you can make the switch.
I'm going to hold on to my shortstop here.
All right.
I'm going to, honestly, the only way I can think to do it between these three is just who do I like the best in terms of upside talent, whatever. And if I were to rank these three, I would go Carson Williams, Jet Williams, Marcelo Mayer. So with that in mind, and this is not the best answer you're going to get from me, but I would avoid Marcelo Mayer. I would stream Jet Williams, and I would go after Carson Williams. Just, it's as simple as that for me. Just how you rank them.
Does Williams have any kind of opportunity in Tampa Bay as any player in Tampa Bay would?
Probably not. They're Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
So that is scary, but also he's the best, and it's not close for me. So for that reason, I think that I have to go Carson Williams and then figure it out between the other two. And it's just because if you're drafting someone this late, I feel like I want the best possible output, even if the playing time might be a little bit more questionable. I'm a hypocrite too, Kevin. I get it.
And where he is where Carson Williams is being drafted, he's not being drafted in every draft format, of course, but he is being drafted around the 550 mark with this nice little min pick of 358. So somebody likes him as much as you do and sees some kind of path to playing time. I'm sure that wasn't in a Gladiator, probably an OC, or maybe even a draft and hold. But we'll see. Kevin, do you rank the Williams any differently? Plus, obviously, Mayer being an option.
No, I agree with Carson Williams, but I'm moving Mayer to my streamer. He may not have a path right away. I don't know that any of these guys do in 2025. Carson Williams, I think, probably has the best opportunity in 2025. But I think, man, Mayer's 22 years old and is still just now getting a 60 overall future value ranking on Fangraphs. That's a huge number for a rookie. I love it. Jet Williams worries me. Francisco Lindor. We just talked about Luis Angel Acuna. So that more has more to do with the avoid and just how high so many people are on Meyer. I'm going to throw him in there. I agree. Carson Williams is probably the key.
All right.
This is getting tough.
Yeah,
when we're getting this low
because you have to pick one for your keep. That's the hardest part.
Pick one to keep. Yeah.
All right. Well, Kevin, I'm going to jump around here a little bit on our outline and move into the outfield because we haven't talked about any outfielders yet. Chase DeLauder of Cleveland. All these guys are going right around pick 700 in ADP. Again, not being picked in every draft. Chase DeLauder in Cleveland starts us off. Emmanuel Rodriguez in Minnesota, and then Jonathan Clase in Toronto. We talked about Clase a couple weeks ago as well. Again, who are you avoiding, who are you keeping, and who are you streaming of this bunch?
Yeah, the reason these guys are all going so late is because we have no idea if we'll see them, and in fact, we probably think we probably won't. I'm a big fan of Emmanuel Rodriguez, and they just Max Kepler just moved along, so there is an opportunity there. I know Chase DeLauder is really high on many people's lists, and I don't disagree. Oh man, this is a toss-up for me. I just don't see him playing much, if at all, in 2025. And I kind of am in that same boat with Clase, unless Springer has a major injury, we're not going to see him anymore. I'm going to give because of the age of at least one, if not a couple other Toronto outfielders. I'm going to go with Clase as my streamer. So Rodriguez is my keeper. I love him. I know he's in a lot of top 10 lists. I agree with that. I think he's going to be great. I know DeLauder is going to be, I really think he's going to be good too, but I think we're less likely to see him in 2025. So Class A is my streamer.
The injury history of DeLauder has to play a little bit of a role
Yeah,
here
that's
as
part of it
well.
too.
And Cleveland also not exactly playing everybody every day out of the gate as well. Trevor, I like the first before I go to Trevor. I like the Class A as a streamer pick, if nothing else, because the thing he brings to the table is obviously all that speed, and if you can stream those stolen bases in the right matchups and catch, you can be valuable in
And
very
like we
short
say all
sprints.
the time, he doesn't have to be starting to do that for us.
Exactly, that's true. Absolutely. Trevor, of these outfielders, where are you kind of putting these guys? Which one you kind of keep, stream, and keep, or avoid?
I really appreciate everything you guys just said because it totally undercuts what I'm about to say. So I would keep Chase DeLauder because this is going to be the weirdest reason ever. Because he brings something different to the Cleveland lineup that they don't have. He is a thumper. He has power.
That's a great reason.
And so I think that when he gets to the majors, hopefully sooner than later, and I know he's been hurt, and that's been a huge thing, and that's definitely a question mark. But when he gets to the majors, all of a sudden he could be thrust into an impact spot in the lineup simply because they don't have a ton of power already existing. So I think I like DeLauder a lot for that reason. And I think that I would keep him. I would stream Emmanuel Rodriguez, and I would avoid Class A. I know he has speed. I know that's helpful. I like the other two better. It's as simple as that. And with Emmanuel Rodriguez, the reason that he's not over DeLauder for me is that he scares me, to be honest. I'm like one of the only people that I've talked to that do prospects that he scares me. He walks an absolute ton. So if it was an OBP league, sure, I probably want him. But it's hard to put into words, but I think that he can be really passive at the plate. He doesn't swing the bat very often. He's uber selective at what he swings at, which can be seen as good and it can be seen as bad. It worries me how he'll handle MLB pitching, if he'll get the certain pitches he's looking for, if he, winds up being a high strikeout guy just because he doesn't get the mistake over the plate as often as he did at the lower levels. Now, he's definitely proven he can hit in AAA. That's obviously, he has power. The power's real. There's something there. There's enough that worries me about it. And again, I'm the only one, so take this with a giant grain of salt. This is just me. It worries me what output he could have just because of the frequency at which he swings. And I think he can be a little passive. So that's for me why I choose stream and why DeLauder would be the one that I take.
All right. Nice.
I love that point, Trevor. And that's something we can actually keep an eye on, right? As he is promoted, like right away. Is the reason he's so selective is because he's waiting for his pitch, and in the leagues he's playing in now, eventually he gets it? Or and will he make that adaptation that, oh, now these guys are throwing in the zone more and start swinging more? Or if he continues to be as passive, they'll eat him up. That's a great point and something that we can probably get a beat on pretty quickly.
All right, we'll stay in the outfield, guys. Go later. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. All right, so I'm going to mash these two groupings together. I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to just pick 3 of these 7 outfielders. All right, so give you a little bit more room to run around here. But you do have to pick one of them to stream, one of them to keep, and one of them that you would just be avoiding regardless. The other ones, you give or take whatever. You can say whatever you want with them. But the names here on the list for everybody out listening at home: Billy Cook of Pittsburgh, again, all outfielder eligible players. Billy Cook of Pittsburgh, Jonathan Rodriguez of Cleveland, Griffin Conine of Miami, Kevin Alcantara of the Chicago Cubs, Reese Hines, who we saw last year in Cincinnati, Wade Meckler, San Francisco, and then Everson Pereira of the New York Yankees keeps his rookie eligibility after not playing at all last year, and has not been drafted, at least not since December 1st. So I will let Trevor lead us off in this new little mini format here. Of these 7 outfielders, Kevin, you have to pick one to keep, one to stream, and one to avoid.
Okay, fun. I will keep Kevin Alcantara. He's, to me, bar none, my favorite player of that group. And as mentioned, I go get my guy. So I would keep Kevin Alcantara. I don't playing time might be a question. Output might be a question, but of these guys, I think he has the absolute highest ceiling. I mean, he has the potential to be an insanely good baseball player all around. So for me, I think that's an easy keep. I would probably stream Jonathan Rodriguez. He's on the Guardians 40. He's another guy who has power, so it'd be a similar thought process to Chase DeLauder. Also, he hit like 30 home runs, if something like that, in AAA last year, and I think he did it with a pretty good average. He did not do that in the majors, but there is something to be said about him being able to do that in AAA, hopefully getting another chance in 2025, considering he is, again, on the 40 already. So I think I stream him and then avoid. I'm just going to say Rhys Hines because I think he's the one that most people would go for because he had this magical week of baseball, 2 weeks of baseball, whatever it was. I just don't think he'll hit enough ever to recreate that. I think you're looking at, it was an Aristides Aquino-esque run.
Yep.
And I think that is, I think this was the second coming of that. I don't think he's going to be productive. So I think I'm going to avoid him.
All right. Kevin, you can overlap, even though you have lots of choices. So again, Billy Cook, Jonathan Rodriguez, Griffin Conine, Kevin Alcantara, Rhys Hines, Wade Meckler, and Everson Pereira. Who you keeping? Who you streaming? Who are you avoiding?
Well, I'm gonna use 2 of the same players. I agree on Alcantara. He's my keep. I'm gonna stream Rhys Hines just because that gives me the option to get him out of my lineup if he does continue to strike out over 40% of the time. But Trevor's right. I am one of most people. I'm going to pick him because I love that power. Loved it. Yes, and Aristides Aquino-esque. But I'm going to hope we see that again. I'm going to hope we can figure this out, bring that strikeout rate down. He's projected for a 36 plus percent strikeout rate. And with guys like that, typically for most players, 30 is the cutoff. But if he can get it to 30, I'm all in on Rhys Hines. All I want is a 30% strikeout rate. That sounds insane. But
What
that's
world
what
are we
I want,
living in?
and then I'm in. Yeah. And so he's my stream. And yeah, I think I really don't want to avoid anybody in this range at this quality of player, but I guess I'm going to avoid Griffin Conine. I just don't think there's a lot of fantasy value there. He could be a good baseball player for Miami. I as of yet, I don't see a lot of fantasy value coming.
All right, fair enough. And this is why I kind of lump all these guys together. It's like you don't want to avoid any of them, but at the same time,
Right.
yeah, you're gonna have to, right? All right, so we've got some first basemen and we've got some catchers to talk about to close us out here. We got to take one last break and then we'll get right to it. All right, we get to those first basemen that I assume, Trevor, you are planning on using a money ball for this one, so I'll let you lead us off here. And then I will put in a new caveat. Whatever name Trevor throws in as his money ball, Kevin, you have the option of also utilizing if you so choose, but only that player. You can make up some other player that I've never heard of. All right, the list that's on here, all first base eligible, all being picked post 700 ADP in the last couple weeks. Tyler Locklear of Seattle, Zach DeZenzo of Houston, and then Nick Kurtz of West Sacramento. Trevor, of these 3, and then anybody else, wild card you want to throw in there? Who you avoiding? Who you keeping? Who you streaming?
Well, this is hard.
We can only use that line so many times, guys.
I know. I am going to keep Nick Kurtz of all people. I think that's a huge risk. But Risk is my middle name. I'm kidding. My middle name's William. But I think I would keep Nick Kurtz just because the Athletics were aggressive with Jacob Wilson last year. And Kurtz is a very polished hitter who could provide average and power. So if they choose to be aggressive again, the payoff is going to be higher than it would be with DeZenzo or Locklear. So off the bat, I'm going to keep Kurtz. I just happen to prefer DeZenzo to Locklear for reasons that I cannot explain or put into words that would make sense to people. It's more of a vibe thing. So I think I would stream DeZenzo, and then just for the sake of fun and to give Kevin something to think about, I'm going to take Locklear out, still avoid the player, but I'm going to bring up a name from the Yankees system. Rafael Flores, who's currently listed as a catcher but played more at first base last year. Honestly, this is just, I'm doing the Yankee system right now. I'm pulling this almost directly from Baseball America. He's their number 10 prospect on their update. Love Baseball America's work if you're looking to prospect stuff. I mean, it's a great site for it. And so I think he's in Double-A. Like it's not like he's close. This is a complete dart throw, wild out of left field. He hit 21
Well, this is why you're
runs.
avoiding him.
Exactly. He hit 21 home runs last year in Double-A. And I just, there's got to be something there. And if you're going to make a dart throw, especially since right now the first baseman in New York is Ben Rice, and we're talking about maybe Cody Bellinger. If he can still show some power, I think maybe there's an outside chance at some point you see him in 2025. Maybe not. Maybe you never see him. I don't know. But I think that was a fun name to throw out to give Kevin something to think about here as he looks at this trio of players.
There you go. All right, Kevin, you have a fourth player that you can consider throwing into one of these, but you do have to avoid stream and keep one player each. Tyler Locklear of Seattle, Zach DeZenzo of Houston, and then Nick Kurtz of West Sacramento. And then Rafael Flores of the Yankees.
Because why not?
Yeah. No, I'm going to stick with the original three here. And first of all, Adam, the reason we keep saying this is hard is because you're giving us groups of players with an ADP after 700, which means they're being drafted in like 2 out of 100 draft and hold drafts, and making us keep one in a gladiator. That's why this is hard.
But I know why it's hard.
I'm going to go with DeZenzo. Going back to the well of what we saw him a little bit last year. It was successful for only 60 some plate appearances. So I'm going to go with DeZenzo as my keep. And once again, like I'm going to say, every group of guys being drafted this late, I don't want to avoid any of them, but because I have to, I'm going to kick out Kurtz. I'm going to go with Locklear. Seattle, ever since they signed Evan White several years ago to that major league deal when he was still in the minors, they've been on the search for a first baseman, and probably the best they've done was a 37-year-old Carlos Santana. So maybe Seattle, let's see if we finally have something at first base. So that's my stream. And that's not a great analytic reason, but sometimes when we're choosing players this late, it's the gut reasons are much more valuable than analytical reasons.
Yeah, fair enough. As I kept kind of flipping through, and I have him up on the screen right now, Nick Kurtz is the one driving the bus when it comes to ADP with a very clear upbound. Most recently hitting around that, just shy of that 400 mark in ADP. So, maybe it's the ballpark that he'll be playing in. Maybe it's everything that, Trevor talked about as well as far as playing time and the Athletics kind of moving that type of player up. But, we'll see if that continues to grow. Let's close this out here with a catcher section. You called out Bubba earlier in the show, so this is a shout out to him. You got to include catchers in some fashion here. And Kevin, we'll let you start it off here with these 3 catchers. There are 2 wild card catchers that are listed. You feel free to interchange them in if you so see fit. But the ones that are in the grouping here, Dalton Rushing of the Dodgers, Adrian Del Castillo of Arizona, and then Kyle Teal, who we talked about, I think last week, now with the Chicago White Sox after being traded from my Red Sox in the Garrett Crochet deal. So between Rushing, Castillo, or Del Castillo, and Teal at the catcher position, which one are you keeping as, if you have to keep them, it has to be your C2. And which one are you streaming and which one are you avoiding altogether?
Can my avoid be one of the bonus 2?
And then you can, if you want to, you can use the bonus 2, and I'll let everybody know who they are. Samuel Basallo of Baltimore, and then Drew Romo of Colorado.
Yeah, once again, like all these guys, but Basallo, due to Adley Rutschman, is my avoid. That's why I asked.
Yeah,
because I didn't
and Gary
want to avoid any
Sanchez
of these guys. Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to avoid any of these guys, but that one I just don't. It will take multiple injuries for us to see Basallo, I'm afraid. Dalton Rushing is my keep. Sounds like we may see him as a starting outfielder in LA. So that's easy. I would like to stream Adrian Del Castillo, but I'm not going to, because with Gabriel Moreno back, I don't know if we're going to see enough plate appearances out of Del Castillo. We talked about Kyle Teal. I think he probably has a hitter being taken in the Rule 5 draft, and it being the Chicago White Sox. Maybe we see him in there, but it's, we talked about that earlier in the show, and I agree with Trevor. We might not see any of those Rule 5 guys really make an impact to our fantasy leagues in 2025. Drew Romo may get
quick
some
note.
run.
Teal came over in the Crochet trade. Just a quick note.
Oh yeah. That's right. That's right. Messed that up, but yeah,
a lot of names.
Drew Romo. He may get some run, and we've seen it with Elias Diaz. I mean, Elias Diaz isn't the greatest hitter in the world, but when you get to play half your games in Colorado and you're a nearly everyday catcher, you can put up some nice numbers. I don't know. We won't see that much from him in 2025, but we may start to. So I'm going to go Rushing as my keep, Romo as my stream, which is what he will be when we're picking him up in July. And Basallo, my avoid, due to just I mean, if he wants to make an impact with the Baltimore Orioles soon, he has to move off catcher, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. Trevor, close us out here then with your take on these catchers of all positions.
Yeah, well, this is so much fun.
It is.
Think that
that's a better response. I like that one better.
This group is fun. I'm gonna just remove immediately. I'm gonna take out Del Castillo, and I'm also just gonna remove Romo because I am just honestly more interested in the other 3 personally. I think for the same reason Kevin said, I'm gonna keep Dalton Rushing because A, catcher outfield eligibility is awesome, and B, he's a great hitter, and looks like he's going to have regular playing time. Whether that be outfield or probably not catcher, maybe catching sometimes. I don't know what's going to happen. They have Will Smith. They don't need Dalton Rushing to catch. But because of that, I think Dalton Rushing for sure is going to be my keep. Kyle Teal is going to be my stream. And I'm just going to add one quick caveat that I'm probably not allowed to do, but the show's almost over, so you can't kick me off. I'm going to have Kyle Teal / Edgar Cuero, because both of them are very close to the majors. Both of them are technically catchers. I think Teal probably takes the job most of the time defensively, and you see Cuero more in a DH role, sometimes catching. But I believe in Edgar Cuero's bat as much as anybody. I've said, and I'll be wrong about it because I've been wrong about it before. I think Edgar Cuero is going to be one of the best offensive catchers in baseball at some point. Last time I said that, it was Luis Campusano. Take it with a grain of salt. But I do think both of them together is interesting, and they should have a chance to be a catching duo there relatively quickly. I mean, the other option I think right now is Corey Lee. So you're not missing out on a whole lot, I don't think. And then With that being said, I'll avoid Basalo just because I do want to talk about him. He is the best hitter of the group, I'm guessing. If I had to say long term, it'd be between him and rushing. He is the best hitter. Does he have room? Rutschman would have to get hurt, or do you move him to first? I think either one could be an option. Maybe he DHs. I don't know. If he does get the at bats, he probably would be someone you want to keep, but that is more in question than it would be with rushing Teal / Cuero. And that's why he's the avoid, but I avoid him with a heavy heart and believe he's going to be probably the best of the group that I just talked about.
See, this is why I gave you the money ball, Trevor, because I knew you'd throw out some name that like seemed like this obvious miss on my part is like including in this grouping. And the draftees or drafters would be agreeing with you as we see his chart going up on Edgar Cuero. Most recently being drafted, in the 340 range of drafts. So actually, before or right around the same time as Dalton Rushing. So a lot of opportunity there in Chicago. And a lot of people think that he'll make the first jump.
Yeah, you'd think that'd be lower though, because I do think Teal is the catcher of the future in terms of defense because he's a little bit better defensively. So I just wonder what's going to happen with Cuero positionally. I guess maybe he could catch this year if Teal's not ready, whatever. But I think that put a huge question mark on it. Like, for example, one of the wild and irresponsible trades I made in a dynasty league, 30-team dynasty league, I traded Jackson Holiday and I got the 3rd overall pick in the first-year player draft. I got Edgar Cuero and I got Cooper Pratt. I was going for Sasaki 1-1. It didn't work out for me, but I felt immediately worse about that trade once Kyle Teal went from the Red Sox to the White Sox, just because I don't know if Cuero's going to be catching long term, and I don't know how much his value takes a hit. So that's kind of why I wanted to group them together as I was answering. It's just kind of hard to know what's going to happen. Both of them are close. Both of them are catchers. I think it just depends on who you think may catch long term. And again, if Cuero becomes a first baseman, all of a sudden his fantasy value takes a hit because he is not offensively going to be as good as you want a first baseman to be. I mean, he's hit over power. So it just depends on where he ends up.
Yeah, I mean, sure. But knowing that he has catcher eligibility going into 2025, no matter what, even if he were to move off of the position, gaining more eligibility and not having to play him at first base, still playing him as a backup catcher or, as a C3 or a C4 in a draft and hold. Seems like the best of both worlds. Kevin, do you see that as an opportunity for Cuero to gain more plate appearances and more value? Or possibly if he does move off catcher, being in more of a platoon or more of a questionable playing time situation with White Sox?
Yeah, it's, and it goes back to what I said earlier about as much as, and Trevor said it too. It's the White Sox probably have a much brighter near future than most people realize, but I don't think we're going to see much of that in 2025. Yeah, sure. So that's kind of my reasoning from steering away from both of those guys there. Shout out to Uncle Ted who brought up Edgar Cuero as we first started, and as Trevor was first bringing him up. So yeah, I agree. But then Teal coming over in the Crochet deal, as Trevor reminded me, that's tough when you got two guys wanting to play the same spot there. But no, I really like Dalton Rushing, and hopefully things work out with him in the outfield.
Can I just say, I know that we are like going on forever here, but just in terms of the White Sox and how they can affect these types of decisions in late drafts, you can look at Cuero, you can look at Teal, you could look at Chase Meadroth, you could look at Colson Montgomery, Brian Ramos, maybe even Braden Montgomery. There's going to be opportunity for these young guys. And like Meadroth, if you're in an average league, he's somebody I'd be going after. He has a plus hit tool, if not even a little better, but he really doesn't have anything else. So if you need a little average bump late in a draft, he might be a guy because he might be somebody who gets an opportunity. He just came over too in that Crochet trade. Colson Montgomery is a top prospect who hopefully can turn it around. He had a down year last year. there's just guys like that who will get opportunities, should get opportunities with the White Sox, that if you look slightly below the surface, you might find a guy, if you're in a draft and hold, that can get you production late. Or if you're in, just a regular redraft league, you can look at for fab, in the middle of the season. And so this is a conversation that Nate and I had on Coffee Talk once, but when you have teams that are bottom of the league, and obviously this is kind of historic, but I did it with the Tigers a few years back too. Those guys who usually wouldn't get time, that nobody's looking at, they're going to get time. And so if you're in deeper leagues, there's value in just the fact that they'll get playing time. And so I'm in 30 team dynasty leagues, so I look for those guys sometimes, but it just, my point being that there are guys that if you want to look, will get opportunity if you like what they can provide.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. All right. This was amazing. Like Kevin said at the very beginning of the show, one of my favorite episodes as well, that we do in the off season, and we did not disappoint on time. Kevin, no, I did not have a problem getting over the hour and a half mark with this content. And we didn't even touch on pitchers. So another subject for another day, I assume, after the holidays.
I do love that you recognized, and on the outline you didn't even start grouping them. You have a bunch of names listed, but you're like, yeah, we're not getting that far.
yeah. No, absolutely not. Cool. Well, Trevor, thank you so much for taking the time and outlining a lot of these. And I know that you've got a new nephew to get back to, who needs your attention. So remind everybody as I pull up the Coffee Talk logo here on the screen, what else they can be looking for you, and how and where they can actually expect. You guys just put out an episode recently, so
yes.
I'm assuming we'll have another one out after the holidays have concluded.
Yeah. So, like I said, Coffee Talk right there. Make sure to listen to our podcast. We've been trying our best. It's getting better and better each episode. I think we're about 30 in. It's one of the newer ones on the podcast network. I'm also doing some writing at Fantrax, doing prospect ranks there, and have been doing some scouting for Prospects Live. So whatever the case may be, you can always find me on Twitter at Hooth Trevor. It's just my last name, then my first name. I'm on Blue Sky, Trevor Hooth, pretty easy to find, not a common name. And of course, I'm always trying to talk as much as I can in the Pitcher List Discord. So that if you have prospect questions and you think I know what I'm talking about, thank you. Also, you can find me there and ask me questions.
There you go. Yeah, the Pitcher List Discord is the place to be when you want to just randomly ask random people questions and then have like 7 people chime in, which is great because usually you get some kind of different opinion. But when you hit on all 7 of the like-minded opinions, you're going in the right direction, or you hope you are at least. So yeah, Trevor, thank you so much. Kevin, this has been a blast, and we will continue on our way toward episode 200 as we get closer and closer to PitchCon, which we are lining up to do another live episode during PitchCon. Should line up to be episode 200, so that'll be fun. More to come from us leading up to 200, but on behalf of Trevor Hooth and Kevin Hastings, that'll do it for episode 194 of On the Wire. Thanks for listening, and we bid you goodbye.
Mele Kalikimaka.